There may be nothing that gets English speakers and writers more anxious than having to make the decision between who and whom. It's thought of as just a terrifically complicated problem. Well, again, as I've said elsewhere, it's not that difficult as long as you have some other concepts. Now, when you're talking about the difference between who and whom, you're talking about a difference in case. So the question about whether to use who or whom is of the same kind as the question about whether to use he or him or we or us, which I've discussed elsewhere. So this chart here shows you the two cases that we're dealing with. So who is in one case and whom is in another case. Case is an attribute of who and whom. Now the nominative case, these are the I, you, he, she, we, they, to which I've added here who and whoever. And the accusative case, these are, to list the corresponding pronouns, me, you, him, her, us, them, whom, and whomever. And if you're even confused about, which one does whom go with, M, as you see, has something to do with the accusative case. The M's go together, and even I guess the me there. So this is where the M's are. The M's, me and whom and them and him, they go together. You see something there about the history of the evolution of the language. Now, again, as I've said in my other video about case, and I've left this same thing right on the board, the only thing you really have to know is, what is this pronoun doing? Is it a subject or is it a subjective complement? If it's one of those two things, then it's in the nominative case. Then it's who. Alternatively, it might be some kind of object, the object of a preposition, an indirect object, or a direct object. And in those cases, it is the accusative. If it's acting as an object, it's whom. And that's it. That's the whole question, the whole thing you have to figure out is just which of these things is it? Is it a subject, a subjective complement, or an object of some kind? And if you can answer, if you can put the blank that you're trying to fill into one of those three spots, you're done. So let's look at this. It is a little more complicated with who or whom because of word order, as we'll see when we look at examples. Now, the man who you know has left. The man who you know has left. Now, what you have to ask yourself here, again, is, well, what is this who doing? Is it an object? Is it a subject? What is it? Well, it's part of this subordinate clause, who you know. Who you know hangs together as a clause that is functioning as an adjective. It's answering the question, which man? The man who you know, that's which man. So, these are the three words that hang together. This is the subordinate clause. And subordinate clauses have subject-verb combinations. The verb is know. Who's doing this knowing? Well, you. You are doing the knowing. You know. So this is the subject. So we know who is not the subject. Now, when you have who at the beginning of one of these clauses, you have to just do a little switch of word order, and you can do a test and ask yourself, would I use he or him if this were not a who clause, but if it were just a regular sentence? Would I say, you know he or you know him? And of course you would say, you know him. You know him. Now, in these who clauses, again, the word order is rearranged as it is in questions. So you might want to do that little switch I've just suggested. You know him, therefore it's whom you know. You know whom, not you know who. So, you know whom. So it should be the man whom you know has left. Who did we invite? Who did we invite? Now, the verb here is did invite. This is a simple question. Did invite. Who did this inviting? We did the inviting, right? We did invite. So that's the subject, we, and did invite is the verb. And again, if we do our little test, ask yourself, what would I say? Would I say we did invite he, or we did invite him? Because in fact, who here is the direct object, as indeed the whom down here was the direct object of know, whom you know him, whom there is the direct object, and whom did we invite, whom here is likewise the direct object. We is the subject. Who was invited? Now the verb, now this means something very close to whom did we invite. Who was invited? The verb here is was invited. Well, right away you should have a notion that this has got to be the subject, because that's all there is left in the sentence. Who indeed is the subject. Who is the thing that was invited. So again, if you did our little test, would you say he was invited or him was invited? Of course you would say he was invited. So the who here is correct. Again, it's not a question. A lot of people, again, they think whom is just somehow always more correct or more formal or something than who is, but that's completely mistaken. Now, let's see. I dined with a man who seldom spoke. I dined with a man who seldom spoke. Now, with is a preposition and is going to be followed by an object. Now, the object of with is man. But man is part of a larger nominal phrase. With who? Or I should say, with whom? With a man who seldom spoke. That's with whom. Now, that fact, though, does not mean that every word in this phrase has got to be in the accusative case. Just because it's part of a phrase whose head, whose chief word, is in the accusative case, that doesn't mean that you put everything in the accusative case. You ask yourself, what is this particular who doing? And this is, once again, a subordinate clause that's functioning as an adjective. Which man? The one who seldom spoke. That's which man. So, who seldom spoke is a subordinate clause. Spoke is the verb. And who was doing the speaking? Well, who was? Who spoke? So would you say he spoke or him spoke? And of course you would say he spoke. So who is correct here? And to take what is probably the most complicated kind of problem, take it from whoever has it. Again, from is a preposition, and it's got to be followed by an object. And you might say, well, this is the closest word to the preposition. It's got to be whomever. But it doesn't quite work that way. First of all, I mean, you can do a short answer or a long one. First of all, if you look at this, whoever has it, this is a subordinate clause that's functioning as a noun, right? Take it from the person. Take it from whoever has it. And unlike nominal phrases, like a man who seldom spoke, clauses do not have heads. That is, they're in the clause, whoever has it, there's no one key word. In a man who seldom spoke, there is one key word, man. And everything else in the phrase modifies man. Who seldom spoke modifies man, and modifies man. But whoever has it as a clause, there is no main word of clauses. So what is the object of with in this sentence in this sentence is really this single word, man. But there is no single word that is the object of from. What's the object of from is this whole clause. And now you look within the clause and you see that, okay, who's doing the having? Whoever is doing the having. It is the direct object of has it. What is had? It is had. Whoever is the subject, and therefore this is correct. Take it from whoever has it. So that is the long answer. The short answer is if you look at this whoever or whomever and you see that it's functioning as a subject, you can stop right there. And if you're sure of that, it's whoever, period.